Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Itzli-Ra, the podcast where we talk about everything related to enlightenment, spirituality, and
Everyday life.
my name is Carlos.
And Veronica.
And in this episode, we are going to talk about fear. I think this is something that is very prevalent in society today, and there's a lot of uncertainty that's happening with the current state of the geopolitical climate, and it's causing a lot of fear in people. And I've seen it. I've talked to a lot of different people who are afraid of what could be or what's happening. And I think we need to talk that through. I think it's important for our listeners to get an understanding of what to expect when they get fear, when they're afraid, and kind of how to deal with it and how to come to terms with it, because it's really really important, because if you're afraid all the time, it can hinder your development and can delay you on your journey. So
Right.
yeah, let's
And
talk about what fear is.
so fear is an emotion that is just part of us. That is, we're born with it. It's innate. We're wired for fear because we are meant to survive. And I know we've talked about that a lot in this
Hmm.
podcast where that is our overall goal of our brain, is to survive. So it is going to go there first before going to the pleasantries, right? Of things. But there's ways of being able to rewire that, right? Rewiring it in neuroplasticity, right? We can shift our perspective or reframe things. But when we're stuck in that fear, right? Just think about our perspective. What are we looking at? Everything through that lens of that emotion. And that emotion is very unpleasant. It is a belief that there is something dangerous out there, or something's going to happen to us, or something's happening to all these other people, or and it just creates this energy in this force that is showing itself up because your brain is going to start picking up on all of it, and a lot of that is not yours, right? And then it
No.
sends you into this tailspin, and next thing you know, like, this is happening, that is happening, right? And everything's happening around you, um, all because of that perspective that you're taking. Um, fear, there's a purpose behind it, obviously, and yes, we can have concern for what is going on around us. We can be prepared for certain things, but we shouldn't allow it to take us out,
Right.
right? I think that's the difference. Like, we should not allow it to take us out. And a lot of the reasons why is because our original setting in of that fear has never been worked on
Exactly.
from our past trauma.
And I think
And
that's one of the interesting pieces, Veronica. Like for us growing up, I mean, our mom was very fearful. She was fearful of everything. So not only like in our example, we come in as humans with this innate part of us that is trying to protect us, and fear is one of those things. But that's now it's amplified by our parents, and it's also amplified by the indoctrination into the religion. It's all fear based. It's like, you go to your mom's like, don't step outside because you're going to meet the wrong people, and I'm afraid to let you go over here, and I'm afraid you can't go there, you're not allowed to explore these things. And then it's like, now you're afraid of for your soul because eternal damnation is going to happen to you. So from 0 to 7 and then farther on, you're basically living in a constant state of fear. So when I think about that, it's like, imagine what it would life would have been like if that wasn't the case. What would that look
right,
like?
right. I always look at it. I saw this quote, and I can't remember the exact quote, but basically it is that it's not that our wings were clipped, right? It was more that the air was poisoned around us. The air was poisoned
Hmm.
around us with fear. So our perspective was through the lens of fear, which prevented us from um, exploring as rightly we should, because that's how we learn, delving into different things, experiencing certain parts of life a lot later than we should have. So I think it just had been passed down from generation to generation to generation. Um, but it's almost like we don't need to forget those things that have happened, right? those things that our parents carried, yeah, that existed, but we don't have to carry it all the time.
Mm-mm.
We don't have to carry it. We can allow ourselves to experience these things, experience joy, experience like fulfillment, even though these things are also happening. It doesn't mean that you're not compassionate towards someone that's going through this. It doesn't mean you're not going to act on these things to be able to help other people. It's just saying, do not let that emotion take you, because you will lose that clarity and lose the choices that are offered when you're not in that lens of fear.
Right. And I think that, in the current state that we're at right now, there's definitely a lot of fear mongering that's happening. You see it on social media all the time. Everybody posting their opinions, everybody jumping on things, everybody giving, that their side of what is currently happening, and it's very fear based, and so it incites people. I mean, if you look at it and you don't bother to actually dig into what is actually being said, deconstruct it yourself, or even research it, you're just going to like immediately feed into that, and now all of a sudden you're afraid of something that might not even be true, and now you're creating these narratives in your head, and you're setting out this intention into the world. Of course things are going to happen to you, or things aren't going to work out for you, because now you, based on what you've heard, or what you've you're letting in, now all of a sudden that is becomes your entire world, and it kind of paralyzes you.
It does. It does. And that's what then makes it easy to control you.
Yes.
And then it makes it easy for someone to step in and be that possible false leader, right? Because you don't want to feel this way anymore. And then you're like, I'm going to just give it to somebody to take care of me, right? Because again, those are a lot of the fears and traumas that we haven't worked on, because we are the sovereign being and we are someone that can only change ourselves, right? No one else can change for us, right? It's us that have to do that. And we can change our perspective on things. We can create change in the world. We can create good change in the world. We can help other people, and we can do all that stuff. But if we're blinded by fear, which create the emotion of anxiety sometimes, not the emotion, sorry, the feeling of anxiety, or sometimes cloud the judgment because we come from an emotional side of it, we may possibly choose to intervene in a way that may not be beneficial, even though we think it is, right? It may be more detrimental than beneficial, um, to intervene in a way that we think is right, just because we are so fired up by that underlying fear of something happening.
And what's super interesting about that is you forget again that you have the answers inside. You can go inside, and what resonates, what really can help you is here, but you spend most of your time here. So the fear triggers. Now logically you're thinking about all of the different scenarios, your head's spinning, you're creating all of these false narratives, and then now you're just continuing this loop. And then there's an echo chamber that forms sometimes of other people that kind of are in that same boat. And now you've got this entire community of people that are now thinking the same way, which then leads to them being easily manipulated and controlled, which is kind of what happens, or what's happened throughout history. This is just taking advantage of how we're built as human beings.
Right. And I think the really, I think, really cool thing that I've seen out now is that the younger generation, some are stepping up with clarity, without that fear behind them, and thinking of innovative ways to um, kind of support community that is sometimes being targeted, stepping up because they don't have that experience yet of fear, and standing up for their own parents, standing up for their own community, supporting in ways that can um, help others, right? To be able to get through this. and shift their perspective and giving them a sense of their power back, right? Because that's what gets stripped when you're in fear.
Yeah, fear has a good way of dividing people. And so I think that that's the goal is finding ways to help mitigate that fear and then uniting people, like, for the greater good, to help
Right.
humanity in general. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we face is how do we overcome that fear? How do we learn how to, you know, deal with it because that emotion is going to come up, but then, think about it in a certain way and then go, okay, this doesn't serve me. I need to continue down this path because this is the way I feel that I can help benefit the greater good.
Right. And it's usually how you walk in the world, right? It's usually working on yourself and seeing in that moment, why am I feeling this way? Okay, why did I get swept by this? Why did it hit me so hard? Okay, let's see, let's take a breath and understand that. And it doesn't have to be like days that you
No,
you contemplate this. This could be fairly quickly. Um, and see where you're going to be, you can best use your talents to be able to support others. Because when you come from an overly fired up emotion, that's sometimes when you get a little your your judgment may be clouded by that emotion, and you may execute something that may not be in the best interest of others, like I said a little bit
that's right.
earlier, because you're coming from your own emotion versus in the best interest of this person or the best interest of these people. It's
Correct.
more from you, right? And you can say it could be your own vanity,
It
right?
could
If
be.
it's it's your own vanity because you feel that this is the right way and this is what it is, and things like that. Versus looking at the whole perspective of how you can be beneficial to others in a way that is not clouded by your own fear and your own judgment.
I think there's something really interesting about the counter to a lot of this stuff when you think about when you're kids. When you're a child, there's this you have this sense of wonder. You have this sense of magic. Everything is magical. It's wondrous. There's this joy. And you're not really thinking about fear because you hear that all the time. Children are fearless. They go and they do and they learn, but they're looking at the world way differently than we are. I think that there's something to be said for trying to get back to that as a human being. Where's that sense of curiosity? Where's that sense of wonder? Where's that sense of magic? Because this world is incredible and there's so much that can be done in this world, but yet, we kind of are narrowed into this one segment of fear.
Yeah, I think that um, it's conditioning your first 7 years, right? No, don't do this. No, this is going to happen to you. No, in certain households, or in other households, it could be that they're abused
Yeah,
and you disassociate and you spend most of your time outside of self versus being in self, and you don't get to experience the world in that way, or it's too painful to be in the body. And then when we're in a state like we are right now, those traumas are really, really quivering and really, really creating this anxiety in people, and it gives up your power. A lot of the times it gives up your power because you don't know which direction to go, and then people just, you know, um, I'm trying to find a really good word for it, but people just lose it.
yeah. Well, I think what you said there is really interesting because it is almost like a triggering event because not only are you dealing with what you're witnessing, what's happening in the 3D, but because of all of that, it triggers up a lot of past traumas that you have. It's like a full triggering event in your body because now all of a sudden all these other emotions are coming up, all these things that have happened are coming up based on this. Because I don't know if it's like you said, you lose it, you lose control, you lose everything, and you kind of just are stuck in this weird loop of you're paralyzed because of all of the things that are happening that are not just related to what you're seeing right now, but related to things that have happened to you in your life.
Yeah, I also think that in addition to that, we talk about the field a lot in this podcast, and that collective ramp up of emotion is quivering that whole field. And those who are sensitive, which are usually people that have gone through a lot of trauma, are really feeling it. They're
Yeah.
really feeling that field. And I think with that, there's a big priority where you have to see and check yourself. Okay, what is mine and what is out there in that field? Okay, and then what is my purpose for feeling that, right? And then make that decision. Okay, are you going to um, understand that it's there and seeing how you can help, right? Understanding how you can help yourself not feel that. So there's different choices that you can make to be able to support yourself when you're feeling that energy that is not yours that's coming through.
Yeah, because it hits you like a ton of bricks. And all of a sudden you're like, why are these feelings coming up right now? Like, what's going on? But I mean, they're intentional. It's meant to happen that way. And I think that because of the, like you said, the collective energy that's being put out there that's so chaotic and so frantic,
Mm-hmm.
that people are that are more sensitive for feeling it. And I think that's why now more than ever, it's really important for people that are sensitive to try to hold that field, hold that as much as possible, and try to dissipate all of that stuff that's coming, understanding that it is not you, these are not yours, putting it back out into the universe and hopefully transmuting it to something a little bit more positive than what it's coming out as.
And then a key thing to that is watching what you consume.
Mm,
Watching what you consume, because there's so many timelines hitting all at once. You're going to get knocked on your butt. That's just what it is, right? There's too much. It's too much for your vessel to handle.
hmm
So watch what you consume. Understand, people are going to be spouting off things, shooting off stuff because they have been indoctrinated to do that
Yeah,
on social media and things like that. Some of it is half truth, some of it is truth, some of it is lie mixed with truth. I mean, and there's so many things. So when you're feeling overwhelmed like that and you're feeling that anxiety, chances are it could be fear that's underneath. And then really check yourself and see what you are digesting, right? What is it that you've been looking at, repeating things over and over again, what
hmm
that is, and creating that anger and disgust and frustration and all those things. And when you're feeling that, find a way of dislodging all of those things. So then you could see where it is that you could help bring something to this humanity that will be supportive, to be
right.
able to create something better within your community, right? Because you can only control yourself and support what's in your community. And the community grows and grows and grows, right?
What's super
So
interesting in all of this is you think about words, right? Words are spells and with intention that get put out. And so if you're an influencer with a lot of followers and you put out something, your followers then repeat it, they're adding to that intention. So there's going to be something that comes out of that intention. It manifests because that's kind of what's happening, but it's intentional. Like all of that is intentional to cause changes to happen in the 3D space that we're in. And so it's important for you to be careful about that. I think that's a really good tip for all of us to just remember. Be careful what you say. Be careful what you talk about. Understand what it is that you're putting out into the world right now, especially when things are super charged. And then figure
right.
out a way that you can actually help. What can you do that's positive? What can you do that can actually help people? And I'm hoping that, this podcast and what we're talking about can potentially help people deal with some of the things that they're facing right now.
Right. I think that also to add to that is there's a difference between informing what's happening, right? And trying to bring also a solution or a way of preparing versus instilling fear. Oh my gosh, this person did blah 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 blah, versus, okay, this is what we've seen happening. This is what we can do to help mitigate that. Right? This is how we can support you. This is what direction you can go. Right? Those kinds of things are always helpful, because if you just drop this fearful news, or let's say the spell, right? Um, and there's no resolution, and then you have the parroting of that, like you
Hmm.
said, that's just going to create an energy of its own, and it's
Yep.
just going to go, and it could cause harm. It could cause harm. And we see a lot of that. And so this is when early in the podcast we talked about use your discernment, bring your spiritual discernment, because that's what time we're in right now. We're in a lot of spiritual, psychological, social warfare. Let's just
Yep.
call it that.
It
That's what's
is.
happening now, because it's a battle of people's values.
Yep. And
It's
people's
a battle of people's
minds.
values.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And because
Controlling people.
everybody has different values, right? Because of wherever you grew up, whatever your conditioning is, and then there's this altruism that is really, really huge out there right now, that you feel that this way is the right way, and you know that's just what it is, and you have different conflicting perspectives and points of view, and so the discernment is so important. And I think if there's one thing I can put out there is tune in your ear to the parroting. When someone's parroting, right, is that true, what they're saying, or did they just take it for someone else and made it their truth, right, without any experience or knowledge or understanding of it? They just manipulated it, right? So just really tune into that parroting of people, because a lot of times that parroting has been morphed. It's kind of like that game of telephone, right?
Right.
Kids, like this person says something and then they changed it, and then they changed it, and when you get it, it's completely morphed into something different that can be alarming or may not be alarming. So really, really tune into that.
Yeah, because
That
everybody's looking at it from their perspective and it changes completely.
it changes completely. So discernment, discernment in this time, and really honing in on your own fear and why is that quivering right now, and finding ways to be able to bring that neutrality into self, and being able to connect to the the inner self, or the higher self, or the true self, whatever you want to call it.
Right. Inner
um,
wisdom, like you said
inner
before,
wisdom,
whatever. Yeah.
like inner wisdom, whatever it is, for you. And that'll give you strength, right? That'll give you strength to stand up for things. That'll give you strength to be able to move forward with things that you need to do, and create and become innovative, and who knows, maybe create a nonprofit to help people. There's so many things that could be created in these times of stress, so many movements, but true movements that will benefit others.
Yeah. I agree 100%. Yeah, it's such an interesting time to be alive, but we're here for a reason. We're here for a reason.
Yeah. I was me when for something that I do a lot is I feel that music can be so helpful in these times to be able to center and really give some clarity of what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling. Um, and especially music that reminds you why we're here, and
Hmm.
understanding these times, and really it's a repeat of times
It
as
is.
well.
It is.
Maybe many of us have been here before, and let's see how we can support each other to do things better, right? To help our community, help our families, support whoever you can. It could be just one person that you give direction to, to be able to help them And then that can just lead to a whole bunch of other stuff. Right.
Yep. It's a ripple that leads to becoming a tidal wave, right? The idea
Yeah.
of you do one good thing to help somebody, whatever that
Right.
help they whatever help they need at the time.
Right.
And it leads, I think that's the counter to all of this. And I think that's the thing that people forget when they get so riled up and they're so into their fear state, because it leads to anger, it leads to hate, it leads to all of these things. But you forget about the fact that there needs to be good and kindness out there to counteract all of this. To remember that we're human beings. We're here to help each other. We're here to help raise the vibration of the planet. But we're here to be kind. We're kind and compassionate people. Let's not
Right.
forget that. Let's not forget that we can help people out.
Right. And also, I think on the counter to those people that may be thinking, well, you're the one that chose this, right? Um, it is also something that some people did because they thought that that was the only choice they had,
Hmm.
right? Or it was because they didn't have the understanding
Right.
and maybe the knowledge of what was, it was their fear driving them as well,
Yeah.
right?
And I think that that's a huge thing to remember. You're not in everybody's shoes. It's not one blanket thing fits everybody. It's not one
Mm-hmm.
size fits all. Everybody has a reason, and it's important as human beings to be able to have a discussion and understand what the reasons are for some of this stuff, or even just be understanding of the plight that people are in, because there's people who did made decisions for different things that we don't live that life, so it's very difficult for us to understand or to even identify with some of these folks. So yeah, and not to say that it's not. I mean, there's not. People don't have various nefarious reasons for doing things that they do, but human beings by nature are not evil people, and we
Yeah,
we can't forget that.
yeah, they're not. They're not. I think we, depending on, where where we're at, is we're functional. We're function for survival.
Yeah.
And when you have this whole weight on you of things like, so most people are financial issues. Most people, like, how are we going to eat?
Hmm.
You lost your job, just all these, so many things, that could be going on. And then they make these decisions. It doesn't make it right that they're making these decisions, but this is where they're coming from, in their perspective of things. And unfortunately, a lot of the times it can be one person that may be riling things up, and other people don't want to stand up against it
Correct.
out of fear.
Yep.
And it just goes like wildfire, and it goes like wildfire, and you can see it. And this is why it's so important to work on our fear, so then we don't quiver,
Right.
and we stand up for what is right. We stand up for other people, right,
Right.
that are being treated wrongly. um I could even say for myself, before I worked on my own, I was fearful. I couldn't speak up, even though I would see something that would happen that was not right. That when I was young, I couldn't, because it was so embedded to me. So I know how
Yeah.
that feels, and I know how hard it is, because your heart starts going, and you just shut down.
Right.
That's just how the nervous system is, and it took a lot of work, but I've gotten to the point where if I see someone treated wrongly, I now have the capacity to be able to stand up for it, for them to speak up for something, regardless of being a fear of having some kind of repercussion happen to me.
Right. Because you stood up
Because
for the right thing.
I know this is right, regardless of whatever direction is, because it just is. It just is.
Hmm. It just
Just
is.
so that perspective and that thought, I think, has helped me through it. And once you do work on those fears, or understand those fears, that you're going to be able to stand up for others, like, be it in a classroom, be it if you're the only one. Don't expect Don't expect a thank you. Don't expect like anything. Just it is. It just is. And then you'll see what happens. Sometimes just by one person standing up, then a bunch of others will help because you just lit that flame and fire in them. And who
Right.
knows, maybe that'll take it and then someone will create something else from it. It just creates this energy, a different energy to help
I think it
generate.
starts with being able to stand up for yourself. I think
Yeah.
that's the first part, right? Understanding that you love yourself enough to stand up for yourself and overcome that fear that's trying to paralyze you to
Right.
protect you, but not really, right? In
Right.
the situation and the day and age that we're in.
Right. And even if you're not able to, let's just say you're in a community that doesn't allow you to do that, at least try to prepare or create or find a way of being able to leave that. Right.
Yeah.
So it's all like being able to plan to be able to leave that to get into a better space or a place for yourself. But yeah, those this fear thing is like it's a tough emotion.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a very tough emotion that triggers other emotions. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's if you don't deal with the innate inherent fear itself, it leads to all these other things that happen. Like you said, you feel anxiety, anger, hatred, just alone, just loneliness. There's so many things that are byproducts of the core, which is fear. And so learning how to deal with that and recognizing that it's fear is really, really, really important. And once you do that, then you have a better chance of standing up for yourself, standing up for other people, doing those things without, again, fear of repercussion, fear of consequences, fear of what might happen. It's just,
Right.
yeah.
Right. It doesn't matter anymore. You just
Mhm.
recognize that no, that fear does not exist in your world, and but you know what is when someone's not treated properly.
Yep. Be a basic good human. And on that note, that's a really good way to end the podcast. I think that I hope this podcast helps some of our listeners because it is a time where we need to really kind of help each other out, be kind and be compassionate.
Yeah, and if you can just raise your field to bring some goodness into this world, then shine your light in it because people do need it right now. And if you can shine your light and help someone not be fearful and be able to stand up for somebody, I think that that'll speak volumes, for the world. One little shift can change a lot.
Yep. All right, y'all. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, have a good
Peace
one.
out.